Hello, everybody. Just going to wait a couple of moments for some people to come on, and then we'll get started. I hope everybody's having a great day so far, and everybody had a wonderful 4th of July weekend if you're here in the States. It was a nice celebration for our freedom. Lots of fireworks going off here too. Okay, so welcome back to those of you who have been here before. And if you're new here, again, welcome. I'm going to let you know that I am Susie Grusin, and I'm a woman who has suffered with BDD and an eating disorder for over 30 years. Hi, Amy, welcome. For over 30 years, and I have recovered, and I'm here every week on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, just sharing some of the tools that I have used to heal. I want to be able to share them with you, hoping that you can make some use out of them, and hoping that they will help you too. I also want to let you know and remind everybody that I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a behavioral therapist, just somebody who wants to be able to help those struggling, because I know how deep the struggle is, and I know it's a journey. So I hope these tools can help. I was here a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about the I am and who we are, and about body neutrality. And last week is talking about how important it is to forgive those people in our life, because forgiveness is really a stepping stone to healing. And today, what I'm going to talk about is triggers. I know that's a very big part of BDD. So I'm going to talk about what is a trigger, how we can recognize a trigger, and how we can actually work with it and to be able to manage our triggers. Okay, so what is a trigger? A trigger is an unhealed emotional wound that sits in our body that is connected to a past trauma. This past trauma usually begins in childhood, and it is at that moment when the emotional trauma is happening that we form and create a subconscious negative belief about ourselves, and that sticks with us. A trauma is activated by a person. It could be activated by an external system, such as school or religious sects, or perhaps even our government. Or a trigger can be created and activated by a place. And what do I mean by a place? If your emotional trauma has happened in a particular place and you revisit that place, it could bring up those memories and then activate and remind you of what happened at that place. So it becomes a trigger for you. I also want to mention that triggers are not inherently bad. They're actually an opportunity for us to take a look at ourselves and reflect, and to see what is going on so that we can actually heal. The level of emotion that happens when you are being triggered actually gives you insight as to how deep that trigger is and how long it's been going on. So for instance, if you're going about your day and you're not being triggered by anything and your emotional level is at a 0, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're being triggered and you go from a 0 to a 10 within a few seconds. So that will also let you know just how deep and how long that trigger has been there. The higher the scale, that means it goes pretty deep. And if it's on the lower side of the scale, it's still there and you're still being triggered, but it's not so deep. Our reaction to a trigger is automatic. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And what happens is you start defending yourself against that trigger. And what's really deeper than that is that you don't really want to acknowledge that you've created a subconscious negative belief about yourself. The triggers are there so that you can bring it up to the surface for you to look at so that you can actually see it. You see, triggers are really below our awareness. It's in our subconscious. Now, you know that you're being triggered. It's happening. You know there's something going on. But perhaps maybe you don't really understand why you're being triggered. What is actually going on that's underneath the surface? If it's a person that has triggered you, that person probably becomes, hi Anna, welcome. That person becomes very confused as to why your reaction is so extreme. They don't understand what's going on. And perhaps you don't either. You just know that it doesn't feel good and that it feels hurt. And you feel hurt. So if you were here last week, I talked about when I was being triggered by my ex-husband. My ex-husband loved to flirt. And he did it quite often. And I was always triggered. I was triggered as to, I'm not good enough. Why is that other person better than me? Why can't I look like that other person? Why can't my personality be like that other person? So it was really difficult for me. And he never understood why. That I was always yelling at him and I would have an extreme, intense reaction. And I would go from 0 to 10 in a few seconds. And it was confusing to him. Not that what he was doing, his behavior was doing, what he was doing was purposeful to me, but it was just what he was doing was triggering me. So I want to ask you, what in your life has happened where you've created this negative belief about yourself? The negative belief that maybe you're not worthy, maybe you're, again, not good enough. Why can't you be like somebody else? So I want you to understand that the belief is not true. It's just an illusion. It's based upon a trauma that has happened in your childhood. Again, last week I talked about my mother and how she was with me as a child. My mother was very volatile. She had a volatile temper, and I was always frightened of her. And so I was very, very shy. And not only that, she was extremely critical of me. She would call me names like scaredy cat. Why can't you just go out and play with the other children? Well, for me, I didn't do it because I was so afraid, because she instilled this fear in me because of her temper. She never came over to me and said, Susie, what's going on? Why are you afraid? What's happening? She would just call me these names. So I took it upon myself, and I made this belief in myself that I was a scaredy cat. If you also remember last week, I mentioned that when I would come home from my grandparents' home, that I would spend the weekends with them, I would come home and she said to me, what did that woman do to you? You got so fat. So I took it upon myself to believe that I was fat. Because as children, as I mentioned last week, we can't discern what's right and wrong, what's real, what's not real. We take it as truth. So I created a belief that I was fat. So what happens when we create these beliefs, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I grew up to be very shy and scared, and I became a people pleaser. I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. So I did what everybody else wanted me to do. And I became an overweight teenager. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So what are the tools that we can use to start taking a look at what is really going on? When you are being triggered, recognize that you're being triggered. Know that you're being triggered and use it as a tool to learn from. Get curious about yourself. Don't you want to know more about you and what makes you tick and what's going on? No matter how negative it may seem to you, find out what is going on. Use it to heal. Try to figure out, why are you being triggered? Is it stemming back to something that happened in your childhood? What is the trigger teaching you? What is the lesson here? What is the gift in the trigger that it's trying to teach you? See, the trigger is actually an opportunity for you to learn and to grow. It's an opportunity for you to take a look at your beliefs so that you can heal the trauma. Ask yourself, the belief that I'm holding about myself, is it really true? Is it really true that you're not worthy of unconditional love? Is it really true that you are unworthy of unconditional acceptance? Is it really true that you don't deserve certain things in your life? The answer is always no. It's always no. And if the answer is always no, then what must be true? What must be true is that you are deserving of unconditional love. You are deserving of unconditional acceptance. You are deserving of kindness and all the other things that we think we don't deserve. So, if we can take a look at what has happened in your childhood where you had this emotional trauma, and what was the thought that you had at the time? What did you create for yourself, that negative belief? Once you start to see this, then you can slowly start to change the thought about yourself. Again, it's about having awareness. It's always about awareness. We need to be aware of what is going on below the surface. Also, in healing triggers, we also need to change the way we perceive the world and the people that are in our world, and recognize that they are there for a reason. See, we attract people into our life a lot of the times to help show us what's going on within us. Because whatever's going on within us, that is the energy that is attracting the lesson in our life. We are attracting people to show us where we're lacking in our life so that we can actually heal it and live a more fulfilling life. Like when I've attracted my husband, my ex-husband. I attracted him to come into my life partly so that his behaviors would bring up those feelings within myself so they're in my face. Because when we have a trigger, they're right there in our face. And to be able to see what is really going on within me. They are a mirror of what is happening internally within ourselves. So how can we start to identify our triggers? One way is when you get up in the morning, set an intention. Set the intention that you want to be able to see and understand what that trigger is. You see, by setting that intention, we're actually rewriting the neurological pathways in our brain so we can objectively see what is really going on. A lot of the times, as I mentioned, we know we're being triggered, but we don't really know why. So once we're able to see the trigger and know what that trigger is, here's something that we can do, and everybody's heard about this, and what I have done to really help me to move through my triggers is to get a journal and write down in the journal as soon as possible after the trigger is happening that the trigger did happen and what was the event that took place. What was the thoughts that you were thinking when the trigger was happening? And what was the emotions going on when the trigger was happening? So for instance, let's say you're at work and a coworker comes up to you and says something critical to you about your appearance, and now your blood is boiling. Or you just spent an hour on social media surfing, and now you're comparing yourself to other people. Also, perhaps you were standing in front of the mirror and you don't like what you see. So write that down. Write down what the feeling was and what the thought is. Once it's on paper, it's really in front of you and you have a clear idea of what's happening. Now, let's go a little bit deeper and find out why. Why you were feeling the way you were feeling. Does it relate back to something that happened in childhood? Does it relate back to that emotional trauma that happened? Because usually it comes from childhood, as we mentioned, and it's from a past emotional, powerful moment that happened. Did someone from your past that you truly value say something critical about your appearance? Did someone from your past that you value say something to make you feel unworthy? What is it that happened in your past? Is the trigger bringing up similar emotions that happened when you were in your childhood? You see, there's a correlation. So what is actually happening now, that trigger that's happening now, it's actually there to help you to see what happened in the past so you can heal it. When you heal the trigger in the present, you can actually start to heal it from the past. Now, how can we use these triggers for growth? So, the first thing that you can do is see the emotion that's happening in your body as energy. It's just energy moving in your body. Because any emotion that's happening in your body is just energy. So if it's fear, if it's anger, whatever that emotion is, it's actually the same energy as excitement. It's the same thing. It's just the label that we actually put on it. Are we putting on the label of fear? Are we putting on the label of excitement? It's energy moving in your body. So what you can do, as I mentioned in my last Facebook Live, that we are not our body. We are not our emotions, or not even our thoughts. We are a soul that comes into the body, that uses the body to move around in the world. We use our emotions and our thoughts to do what we need to do in the world. But we are not those things. So if you go back and watch my Facebook Lives, I explain that in more detail. So we are the I am. The I am is our soul, that all-knowing part of us that has not been bombarded with the emotions and with the thoughts and everything, all the feelings that are going on. So see the emotion as energy and help it to move. We need to let that negative energy that's in our body to move. And how can we help it move? By using our breath. We use our breath to move the energy in our body so it dissipates. It starts to dissipate. It starts to lessen. So we take a deep inhale in. Focus on the area in our body where that energy is. Is it in our chest? Do we have a tight feeling in our chest? Do we have a tight feeling in our stomach? Where is that energy? We take a deep breath in. We notice where it is in our body, and we exhale that energy where that emotion is happening in our body, where the energy is in our body. And we continue to do this. We take a deep breath in, focus where that energy is in our body, and breathe through it. Visualize your breath going into that area in your body. It may take 3 breaths, it may take 10 breaths, it may take 20 breaths, but it starts to dissipate. And that's how we can use the breath to move the energy, and how we can start to shift and change that in our body. The next thing that we can do is practice observation. We have been in a subconscious habit of reacting to our triggers. So by using our journal and writing down what is happening, writing down what the feeling is, and writing down what the thought is, we can actually slowly shift that thought and that energy. Track your progress. Give yourself permission and thank yourself and be grateful for the emotion and what is actually there to teach you. So by being grateful, thank you, anger. Thank you, fear, for showing me what I need to do to shift that and what it can teach you. Be mindful of the new relationship that you are having with your emotions. With some practice, you can begin to see how your ideas around the emotion is shifting, because they will slowly shift. This does take practice, it does take time, but we need to do that to be able to heal, so that when we are dealing with our BDD, we notice what is going on. When we are dealing with the trigger, we're able to actually heal from that. We also be able to heal our relationships, because when we are being triggered, we are also starting to trigger the other person, because they may have their own subconscious beliefs, and we can come together in a healthy relationship. Next is actually releasing. Allow yourself the process to go through this. Allow yourself the process and to move forward. And if this is a difficult task for you, it's okay. Take it a little bit at a time. Observe yourself and be patient with yourself, and use your intentions to let you know when and when it feels safe to release. I also want to touch upon social media. You know, a lot of us, we go on social media every day, and we see pictures of other people, we look at magazines, and recognize that that is not reality. We know there's Photoshop out there. We know that there's airbrushing going on. People may look perfect in our eyes, but they're really not perfect. There's only 5% of the population that truly has a perfect figure and perfect features by whoever created those, that the proportions are perfect. There are those people out there. But you know, as I learned to heal, which was very difficult for me to see, I was always comparing myself to other people and to all those pictures on social media and on television and in the magazines. And as I began to heal, I began to appreciate the other person's beauty. I began to appreciate, well, good for them that they look like that. You know what? We are all unique. We are all unique in how we look. We're all unique in our personalities. We're all unique in our talents. We are not exactly the same as anybody else. We are created completely different from anybody else. And start to take a look at, what are those special qualities that you have, that you can appreciate. We all have this uniqueness that makes us who we are. Also, when looking at social media, I also want you to understand that, you know, in our minds, we think they're perfect, okay? But do we really know what's going on in their lives? They may look great, but are they sad? Do they have issues going on that we can't even imagine or even possibly relate to? Nobody's life is perfect. We're all here to learn something. We're all here, we all have our lessons to learn. So beauty is not just the outside. Beauty is actually more on the inside. Beauty is really, how do we treat another person? Do we treat them with kindness? Are we loving towards them? Do we accept them like we want to be accepted? How do we treat another person? How do we let our light shine through that is truly our beauty and our uniqueness? When we let our light shine, that is the true beauty. When we treat somebody the way we want to be treated, are we lending a helping hand? Are we giving another person a smile? Because you know, a smile can go a really long way. When you smile at somebody else, you're actually giving that person a gift. You're smiling and they're taking it as acceptance. The beauty is really deep inside. And when we let it shine through, then the outside becomes beautiful. People would rather see a person's beauty from the inside and know that they are a good person than just seeing the outside beauty. Because you know what? Outside beauty only lasts so long. We all get older. We all get wrinkly. We all, have our bodies change. And that's okay. I would much rather be friends with somebody who's beautiful on the inside than somebody who's beautiful on the outside. And just because they're beautiful on the outside, they may be ugly on the inside. They're a mean person. They're not happy. They don't smile at people. So really come to understand what that really is. So I hope that this has helped you today. You can use some of these tools and start to think about what I had to say and maybe change the feelings and the thoughts that you have around what beauty truly is. Okay, anybody have any questions or comments, please put them here. I appreciate you joining here today. And I know sometimes it's hard to take in what I say, so there will be a replay up on this page that you can watch and take some notes. Go back and rewatch the last two that I did. And where is everybody from? I'd like to hear, where is everybody from? Are you here in the States or are you abroad? Oh, you're welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining today. I'm glad you were able to join today. Okay, everybody. Well, if you don't have comments here. Oh, hi, Anna from the Philippines. You're back again. Thank you. Okay, so, oh, New Jersey. I love New Jersey, Courtney. I have friends there. I go there once a year. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody. So if you think about later, you have a comment or something you want to say or a question, just put it in the Facebook page and I'll be more than happy to help. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye. Thank you, Courtney.